The plan was for me to go talk to the adults I trusted while Steve tried to figure out how to get the ship to drop out of tunnel. That was something he couldn't do alone, and somehow we were divided into 2 teams, with everyone but me and Tamrat working with Steve. That meant Tamrat and I were alone. You know, you can talk to me about what's going on, I told her, trying to keep my voice neutral.
So could you,
she snapped back. I told you why I can't. I'm trying to protect you.
Maybe that's what I'm doing,
she said. And maybe it isn't, I countered. I don't know if you don't talk to me.
Yeah, well, maybe you ought to know without being told.
That's stupid, I said.
I know,
she agreed. We were passing by an empty conference room, so I pushed her inside and closed the door behind us.
Do we really have time for this?
She asked, hands on her hips. Her whiskers shot back in a way I knew meant she was irritated. I don't know, I said, but I really don't want to go into a dangerous mission distracted by the fact that you're shutting me out. I know you have things on your mind, responsibilities, but I don't get why you're angry with me.
I'm not angry with you,
she snapped. That would be a lot more convincing if you didn't sound angry, I told her.
Well, I'm angry now because you won't stop insisting that I'm angry.
I sighed. Come on, Tamrat.
Fine, she said. You tell me how you reactivated your abilities, and I'll tell you why I'm not angry.
I turned away.
That's what I thought,
she said. Look, it's not safe, okay? I blurted out without meaning to. I have to eat this stupid powder and roll a die, and if I don't get a 4 or better, something bad happens.
What kind of something bad?
The death kind, I admitted. Before she could say anything else, I cut her off. It's only a 15% chance, and I haven't used it except when there was no other way. I'm not being reckless or anything.
Why didn't you tell me?
She demanded. Because I didn't want you to worry, I said. And because I was afraid you would do it yourself.
Oh, Zeke,
she said, throwing her arms around me.
Every time I think I know how stupid you are, you find some way to surprise me.
There were some things in our future, terrible things, dangerous things, that I did not want to think about. But knowing Tamrat was on my side somehow made it all easier. No matter what was going on with her, she cared about me. I broke away from her hug. I didn't know how much time we had to spare, but this was important. What's going on with you, Tamrat? She shook her head.
I can't stay on Earth. And I just didn't want to, I don't know, get too comfortable.
I couldn't help but laugh. I'm the one who's stupid? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. We don't know what's going to happen. Why plan for something you can't control? When all of this is over, maybe you'll want to stay on Earth.
But Ardov said...
You're getting life coaching from Ardov?
Not anymore, since he was eaten by a sea monster, but he said he'd spent time with the beings on Earth, and that they would always hate me for being different. They would hate you for being my friend. The humans are going to be suspicious of aliens after the invasion, and it's one thing for me to be treated badly, but you're going to have responsibilities once Earth joins the Confederation. You won't be able to do that if everyone on your planet hates you. If I stayed, you'd have to choose between me and your own world.
And this is what Ardov said?
He said it, but I already suspected it.
Why not ask me what I think? I might know more about Earth than either of you.
Because you always want to see the best in beings. And Ardov might have been unpleasant, but he wasn't easily fooled.
I took her hand. The whole reason she didn't want to come to Earth was because she thought it would make my life difficult? Let's not make any decisions, okay? Let's just see what happens, and we'll make a decision when we have to. She nodded. There was more to say, especially about the powder, but that could wait until later. The main thing was, Tamrat and I had cleared the air, and suddenly, doing an incredibly stupid thing because we had no choice didn't seem so bad after all. The conversation with Dr. Roop and Captain Quassel was an uncomfortable one. They were both tired of running, and they didn't want to believe what I had to say at first. They knew, however, I would not make something like this up, and after a couple of convincing demonstrations of the lie detector, they had to admit, however reluctantly, that I was telling the truth.
"How do you want us to cover for you?" Captain Quassel asked.
"Whatever you think works best," I said. "You don't want them to suspect you. Glee-Wixix doesn't really know me, and since she's in Junip's camp, she's probably inclined to think the worst of me. You can keep telling her that I'm full of myself and need to be a hero. That'll go along with your concerns from the meeting." "Zeke," Dr. Root began. "Don't worry about it," I told him. "You didn't know what I was up to, and I'm sure it looked rude. The main thing is that you anticipate what she's up to and try and find a way to control what the public knows." He nodded.
"How trustworthy are these Fadic renegades?"
"I think they're sincere," I said, "but they're strange. I don't have any doubt that they really mean to destroy Confederation Central if my plan doesn't work."
"Then it had better work."
He put a hand on my shoulder.
"You're not going to use that powder again, I hope."
"I may have no choice," I told him. There was no way I was getting through this without using the powder and the dye. "It's the most powerful advantage that we've got."
"I understand,"
he said.
"But make sure you have exhausted all other options."
"I will. I'm in no hurry to get a bad throw." My data bracelet pinged. Steve was letting me know that he had monkeyed with the engines and we were ready to emerge from tunnel. "I better get out of here," I told Dr. Roop. "You don't want to be seen near me when all of this goes down. They might suspect you've been helping us."
"We can't have that."
He nodded, and then he and Captain Quassel gave me hugs.
"At some point, things are going to get back to normal, and then you're going to love life in the Confederation,"
Captain Quassel said. "This is normal for me," I told her. "Maybe normal will seem boring, but I'm willing to find out." Tamrat and I left the room and headed to the shuttle bay. When we arrived, Steve used his data bracelet to remotely trigger whatever nasty sabotage he had cooked up. At first, nothing changed, and I thought perhaps he had failed, but then there was an odd sensation of dropping out of tunnel. Alarms began flashing, which was natural for something like this. Captain Quassel would be going through the standard operating procedure for an unplanned tunnel exit. No doubt the director would review the logs, and she would want to make sure everything looked the way it was supposed to. We boarded the shuttle. Tamret took the navigation control and hacked into the ship's computer to seal the bay from the ship. Then, she began the process of opening the exterior doors. Meanwhile, I conveyed the coordinates of the Renegade base to Steve, who was preparing a tunnel aperture in advance. Tamret got the plasma field down, and we were on our way. Steve flew evasively, just in case. Captain Quassel would raise no suspicion by not wanting to fire at us, but who knew what kind of authority the director might have? I wanted to be well away before she tried to exercise any of it. There were several attempts to contact us. Captain Quassel was clearly going through the motions to cover her own tracks. We ignored these, and the moment we had our tunnel aperture, we were gone. It would take about 11 hours to get to the Renegade base. We would reach our destination around the same time the ship arrived at Confederation Central. We had no way of knowing what was in store for them, and they would be clueless about what we were up to. There were countless things that could now go wrong, and I was expecting to have to deal with every one of them. Our return to the Renegade outpost was uneventful. They hadn't given me any instructions on how to enter the cloaked compound, but I figured I didn't need them. I had the location still recorded in my bracelet, so we flew low and broadcasted a message announcing who we were. I received a response telling me where to land. They created a momentary opening in their cloaking shields, and we flew in. While the humans among us gaped at the Old West look of the settlement, we landed next to a few other short-range vessels, which were about the only high-tech things in sight. Otherwise, it was all cowboys and nerfs. By the time we emerged, Convex Icosahedron, Adjul Ip, and a small band of armed guards had shown up to meet us. I took no offense in the precautions. They had no idea why we were there, or if we were who we claimed. I made introductions all around, and if all my friends seemed a little on edge, it was only because we were surrounded by fads, and a guy with a geometric shape for a head and no face. Colors swirled over Convex Icosahedron's flat surface and sharp angles, as he seemed to regard us.
"As you are here," he said, "I presume your mission to rescue Glee-Wixix failed, Zeke Reynolds."
"No, the prisoners were rescued," I said. omitting the fact that we hadn't had anything to do with the rescue. The more competent he thought us, the better. And everything went pretty smoothly on Planet Pleasant. The problem is that your lasso of truth gave away Glee-Wixix's secret, that she's working with Junip. I couldn't be bothered to include his name at the end of every sentence. I hoped this counted as a strategy session, so I wouldn't be given a hard time. The colors of convex icosahedron's head shifted more rapidly, which I'd come to think of as something like a nod.
I thought that device might come in handy, Zeke Reynolds.
If Glee-Wixix
cannot be depended on to restore order to the Confederation,
Ajul-Ip said,
then we'll have to return to the original plan.
I have a better idea, I said. That's what I want to talk to you about. And, hey, we're talking strategy, right? We can drop the names, can't we?
A reasonable observation,
Convex icosahedron said, mercifully not using my name.
Let us continue our conversation, but you and Vilonic only, Zeke Reynolds. Your associates can await our decision.
Not acceptable, I said. They're in on all of this.
That may be, but I cannot have cacophony in a meeting of such import. Only the two of you, Zeke Reynolds.
Steve shrugged.
It's your plan, mate, he said. It's up to you to sell it.
Though, why... He jabbed a thumb at Vilonic. I shook my head. They like him, for some reason, but I don't like the idea of anyone being boxed out. I turned to Convex icosahedron. We're a team. Anything we discuss, they need to hear themselves. Convex icosahedron appeared to consider this. As
it should be,
he said, as though he hadn't been the one who proposed separating us in the first place. We followed the Renegades to the building where we'd had our previous strategy meeting. It took a few minutes to gather all the chief advisors, including Colonel Rage, and when he came in, he created a bit of a stir.
What?
Alice said when she saw him. What's he doing here? Misun demanded. I had had a lot on my mind, so I'd maybe forgotten to mention the human who had betrayed us back at the Hidden Fortress was now working with the Phatic Renegades, and that he was basically trustworthy as long as he didn't think betraying us was in Earth's best interest. We can trust him, mostly, I said wearily. Honestly, I didn't have the strength to go over the details. Enemy of our enemy and all that. To his credit, Colonel Rage did his best to mend fences, apologizing to everyone and explaining that then, as now, his priority was to protect Earth.
The fact is, he said, I've learned that you kids may be better judges of these alien creatures than I am. Maybe it's your youth, I don't know.
He rubbed at his eye patch like it irritated him.
If you have something to say that can help us get those monsters off our planet, I'll be happy to listen. Nice speech, geezer, Steve said. Don't cross us again.
I clearly missed out on some excitement, Niana said.
Now that we have that out of the way, the Colonel said, I understand you have some new information and a new plan.
I had lost track of how many times I'd been in desperate situations, life or death conflicts in which I felt like everything was on the line. I'd been terrified each time, but there was always something that needed doing, maybe a dozen things. I could be scared, but because I had to act, I could put the fear aside. Now, here I was trying to convince these adults that they should drop their plan and follow mine. I needed to convince them that I was right, or Confederation Central would be destroyed. I took a deep breath, reminded myself to speak clearly and decisively, and began. You have come up with a way to win this conflict, I said. You want to put an end to the Phatic Empire. We have the same goal, but we've come up with a different way to do that. We think it's better because it preserves Confederation Central. It saves a great city full of millions of beings, a wonder from the time of the formers. We think the place and the beings are worth saving if we can. I then went into the details. I told them how we would use their portal to Earth and destroy the Phatic occupation there, gaining access to their computers which would provide irrefutable evidence of Junip's complicity. Our aliens on Confederation Central, meanwhile, would expose both Junip and Glee-Wixix. Not only can we accomplish our goal without having to sacrifice innocent lives, I concluded, but we show the galaxy that the Fads can be overthrown. We break the alliance with Junip, and we humiliate the Fads by taking away their conquered planet. I struggled to find some clever way to finish, something like, "This combination is a winning combination," but everything that popped into my head either sounded stupid or like an ad for candy. Instead, having made my point, I sat down. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I suppose I imagined everyone at the table leaping up and cheering. Perhaps there might be a chant of "Zeke! Zeke! Zeke!" This was, admittedly, unrealistic, but I still thought it was a good speech and deserved some kind of acknowledgement. Instead, I got nothing. On Earth, we would have heard crickets. Here, there was only a low, distant humming sound made by the carnivorous plants.